How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? This is Jeff Benjamin with 9to5Mac. Over the years, I have talked about Final Cut Pro 10 a lot, right? But there's never been sort of a formal place for a regular, reoccurring series about Final Cut Pro 10. So I thought, hey, why not do something like that? Because a lot of people ask me questions about this all the time. So with that in mind, yeah, we're going to try to do a regular series about Final Cut Pro 10, and that's going to include tips, tricks, tutorials, how-tos, hardware reviews, whatever the case may be. If it has to do with Final Cut Pro or the editing realm in general, then you can expect it to be covered here. So in this very first episode, we're going to talk about something kind of inside baseball, sort of very particular, but I think a lot of people can benefit from it, and that is using 4K source media and then using that in a 1080p deliverable, and then really taking advantage of the extra resolution that is derived from that 4K source media and using that to zoom around into different places around the video to help with context and help with your storytelling. Especially helpful for tutorials, I found. Without further ado, let's talk about using 4K media in a 1080p deliverable. So to showcase this, what I've done is I've created a 4K project, and that 4K project has a 4K image in the background, 3840 by 2160 UHD 4K. Now I'm going to add 1080p images on top of this 4K image, and notice what happens as I add additional images in 1080p. So I'm going to play here. You can see the background, get the UHD image in the background. I add a 1080p image in the upper left hand corner. It takes up approximately, well, exactly 1/4 of the frame, right? So when I add another 1080p image, it takes up 1/2 the frame. When I add another, 3/4, and then I add another, it takes up the full frame. Oops, I almost deleted that. It takes up the full frame, all right? So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that 4K is 4 times the amount of resolution, or 4 times the area of 1080p. Now let's go on to the next test. So we're going to remove all the 1080p images. And now we have our 4K. Now I'm going to place a 1080p right smack in the middle, and then I'm just going to zoom in, and then I'm going to stop once it fills the entire frame. So zooming in, zooming in, zooming in. We're at about 180%. I'm going to zoom in some more, and now we're stopped. 200%. So basically what this tells us is that if we take a 1080p timeline, we place a 4K image on that 1080p timeline, we would be able to zoom in 200% while still maintaining full HD or 1080p quality. Now, if you try to zoom in a 1080p native clip on a 1080p timeline 200%, it's not going to look pretty. It's going to look pretty bad almost immediately because it's going to be pixelated, etc. Whereas if you take 1080 or if you take 4K source media on a 1080p project and you zoom in 200%, it's going to look virtually the same as 1080p because you have all that extra resolution. It affords you the ability to zoom in, perform faux pans, things of that nature, and take advantage of that extra resolution even if you're delivering at 1080p. Okay, so to illustrate this, we have a 1080p timeline, and I have 2 types of clips on this timeline, a 4K clip and a 1080 clip. Now I have spatial conformity enabled for these clips here, so it will automatically set to fit these clips on the project timeline and in the frame. So what this basically means is that when I play both of these clips, these first 2 clips, the 4K you can see there, and the 1080, you're not going to really be able to discern a difference between those two. You can see how they look almost exactly the same because this is a 1080 frame, and spatial conformity is making it so that they both fit in the frame perfectly. Now watch what happens though when we start to zoom in. So I'm going to play again. Now we're zoomed in. This is the 4K zoomed in to 200%. Now notice how sharp the text is. Everything looks really good. This is the 4K clip zoomed in to 200%. Now watch what happens when we zoom in on that 1080p clip. Notice the difference there. You can really see how the edges of the text are kind of jagged, kind of out of focus, just don't look nearly as good because we've zoomed in on a native 1080p clip, whereas when we did the same thing here on the 4K, because there's that much more resolution, it can afford to zoom in 200% and look exactly like a 1080p clip it should look. So when we do the same thing on a 1080p, that obviously isn't going to look as good. So really highlights the advantage of using 4K media. Even if you're delivering at 1080p, it affords you a lot more flexibility in post. You can do things like zooming like this to highlight various areas of your video. So I know you're probably wondering, Jeff, where are you going with all this? What is the purpose of all this? Well, let me show you one quick example of something I set up here in our example project. So this is a tutorial I did earlier last week for Affinity Photo. And while it's nice and it will work perfectly fine just like this, wouldn't it be nice if you could zoom into the various portions of the frames, like in the upper left hand corner in this instance, to better be able to see, better highlight exactly what's going on? Especially if you're watching on a very small screen, it would be so much more helpful to zoom into that area and help the viewer be able to see what's going on. The same thing happens over here when I tap in the upper right hand corner. You see there, wouldn't it be nice to be able to zoom into that particular corner to see exactly what's going on? And that's exactly what I've done. And that's really where 4K media presents some value when it comes to things like tutorials, because you can actually zoom in without losing resolution and better highlight what you're demonstrating on camera. So what I've done is I've broken up the frame into basically 9 different sections. Section 1 is in the upper left hand corner, section 2 upper middle, section 3 upper right, and then you have section 4 middle left, section 5 dead center, section 6 middle right. You get the point, right? Section 7 bottom left. And this allows us to quickly be able to edit a video and highlight these special portions of the frame where it would be helpful for the viewer. So let me show you exactly how this works. So let's go to a portion of the frame where we're highlighting perhaps a corner. So you can see I'm highlighting the corner there. So let me cut this, and we're gonna cut here, and I'm gonna select this portion of the clip, and then I'm just gonna double click on one. So that is able to zoom right into that particular section like that. So let me play it back, and you can see why that is so beneficial, right? And then it jumps right back to the full frame like that. So the value of setting up these custom effects really becomes apparent, and I've actually set up a special category called area for all these effects, all 9 of these effects. And basically what we've done is we've zoomed in to 200% on all the effects, and then we've just moved the X and Y axis depending on where we want to go in the frame. So on the post over at 9to5Mac, I have all the coordinates set up, but you can also download these particular effects and save them to your own project. Now this will only work with a 16:9 project with the coordinates that I have, but you can of course configure this to any type of project. So let's do a few more. We're going to navigate through the timeline, and all right, so upper right hand corner there. So we're going to basically form a cut there and form a cut right about there. So in this case, we would select 3, right? Because it's in the 3rd area, as you can see, according to the way I have this broken down. So we're just going to double click on 3, and you can even mouse over to verify. If you double click on 3, and then we'll play it back. And let's see what happens here. All right, so you can see how helpful that can be, especially if you're on a smaller screen. Really helps to illustrate exactly what's going on in the tutorial. So let's do one more. Scrub through here and find something else. Maybe we can get another area. How about actually we use this to really kind of target the areas where I'm selecting here. So that's about bottom left, would you say? So bottom left, and then maybe middle, left middle. So let's go ahead and select bottom left, and we'll go here and select left middle. Let's try that and play it and see what it looks like. So there we go, bottom left. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So you can really see the value of that. Of course, we could continue and really make it immersive and follow my hand as I go through and select these different points on the frame. So let me show you how to go in and create one of these different area selections so you can do it yourself on your own computer if you don't want to download my presets, which I will upload so you guys can do that if you want to. Again, this is for a 16:9 project, but let's go ahead and just go here. I've cut that out. So we're going to zoom in 200%, 200, and then we're going to use our slider here, and we know that's going to be 960. So just select that 960, and then we're going to move the y-axis like that, and that will be -540. So that would be, in this case, number 1. So all I would do is select Save Effects Preset, and then I would create a new category. I've created one called Area, and basically give it a name. In this case, it would have been 1. But I've already created that, obviously, but just to show you guys how you would go about creating all 9 of the area selections, you can do that. So I've just put in 1 and then save it. So ladies and gentlemen, that is a showcase of one of the benefits of using 4K source media in a 1080p deliverable. If you appreciate this, please leave me a thumbs up and let me know what you think down below in the comments. This is Jeff with 9to5Mac.